this is something that I think is so important. The whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, and I have to say, in a way, the American right kind of made this monster, and it's now sort of attacking them, where it became like every person who ever talked to Jeffrey Epstein, who ever met Jeffrey Epstein, somehow had suspicion on them that they were a pedophile or had an interest.
This isn't damage control anymore. It's a chaotic counterstrike collapsing in real time. The illusion of invincibility shatters on camera. The glossy image, the quiet wealth, the untouchable empire, all of it fractures the moment the response begins. What emerges isn't denial, it's instinct. Legal forces mobilize. Posts disappear. Major outlets go silent. And instead of retreat, one rival charges forward. Everything unfolds fast, publicly, with no room to contain it. Within hours of the Epstein file release, Jay-Z's name circulates through an FBI intake record tied to a 1996 Florida property. Almost immediately, 50 Cent announces a documentary, then intensifies after alleged warnings surface. Rumors follow that Jay-Z has gone overseas. Beyoncé's follow account reportedly drops by the millions, and the silence from their usual media allies becomes absolute. None of this feels harmless. The timing feels wrong. The reactions feel synchronized. The retreat is too clean to ignore. Whatever system is activating now is old, heavy, and already moving toward consequences no statement can stop as the momentum keeps building.
So first, I think we just have to say, and you set it up well, there are two real storylines here. One is what is in these files that we can see and that we can actually learn. We're going to get on that first. There's also the story about what is not in these files or what is heavily redacted, because that is...
The reaction inside the Carter circle hardens instantly, and that response becomes the story. As the Epstein files spread, insiders say the objective isn't understanding, it's suppression. Control, not clarity. Warning signs appear everywhere at once. Posts referencing the file vanish overnight. Gossip pages fall silent. Scandal-driven outlets hesitate or avoid it entirely. Public conversation shuts down while everything moves through legal corridors instead. And the name most often tied to that pressure is Beyoncé's. Industry sources describe it as a familiar playbook. Cut the flow. Kill the reach. Starve the narrative. Reassert access. This is the opposite of how an innocent situation normally looks. The silence doesn't feel calm, it feels constructed, coordinated, engineered, and that coordination becomes impossible to ignore when it collides with someone who refuses to stay quiet. That collision hits publicly on January 31st, when 50 Cent posts a blunt reaction to Jay-Z's name appearing in the Epstein material. "Dan, they got your man Jay in the Epstein files. I got to do a doc on this now." There's no curiosity in it. It doesn't read like interest, it reads like provocation. Within hours, memes flood timelines. AI visuals appear. Mocking captions spread, suggesting he knows exactly which pressure points he's hitting. People around him say alleged legal warnings don't soften his tone, they sharpen it. Instead of backing down, he escalates, teasing exposure and daring anyone to stop him. In an industry trained to obey pressure, his refusal becomes disruption by itself. The surface explanation tries to minimize it. Jay-Z's name appears only in an unverified FBI intake record from July 2019, linked to an alleged 1996 Florida property incident. No charges, no follow-up, no confirmation. That's supposed to close the story. But the reactions don't follow the script. Jay-Z offers no denial, no statement, no public defense, no representatives enter the press cycle. Instead, reports begin circulating that he's left the country, framed as temporary, but never clearly explained. At the same time, analytics accounts claim Beyoncé's following drops by the millions within days, a visible sign of public unease her team refuses to address. These aren't the moves of people expecting a story to fade. They are the movements of people preparing for pressure and bracing for impact.
So what happens now is this is simply a civil complaint. And in a civil complaint, it goes through the technical legal process. Now, the distinction, Jessica, between civil and criminal, of course, is that civil is for monetary damages, right? The system can only reward you with money. There's allegations that this 13-year-old is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, suffered depression, etc. So now you go.
This is the point where the story starts to distort. If the mention is meaningless, why does it trigger such an extreme shutdown? If the intake record is weak, why not confront it directly? Instead, the response hardens. Insiders note that Beyoncé has spent years building a brand defined by control, precision, and authority, and this moment stress tests that entire structure. Lawyers replace warmth. Silence replaces explanation. The people who normally speak for the Carters suddenly vanish. Lines go dead. Channels close. Even allies hesitate, hovering like they are waiting for orders. The silence creates a vacuum, and that vacuum fills fast. With theories, with fear, with obsession, with speculation. Exactly what containment is meant to prevent. Instead, it multiplies. And what feeds it is the contrast, who disappears, and who doesn't. 50 Cent keeps talking, keeps posting, keeps pushing. He references his recent documentary takedown of another powerful figure, reminding everyone he knows how to turn allegations into narrative and pressure into attention. He jokes about smelling beef and popcorn, framing the chaos as entertainment while making one thing clear: he isn't intimidated. He isn't retreating. Industry veterans say this isn't random trolling, it's calculated pressure. By refusing to let the story die, he forces the Carters' silence into the spotlight. Every hour without a statement adds weight to the insinuations. Every empty space deepens the tension. The media ecosystem amplifies it. Fans start noticing patterns. Outlets known for breaking celebrity scandals won't touch the story. Mentions disappear. Posts get erased. Screenshots spread showing deletions with no explanation. People start asking, coincidence or control? Beyoncé's name keeps surfacing, not as the subject of the allegation, but as the figure with the power to make narratives vanish. That perception alone reshapes the story. The focus shifts. The question stops being what happened in 1996 and becomes what's happening now, who's managing it, and who really decides what the world is allowed to see.
If we get to the bottom of Tupac's when that is finally revealed, 15 other will be revealed with it. And you will find that they were all committed by the same two people, father and son.
As days pass, the rumor of Jay-Z being overseas hardens into accepted fact online, even with no official confirmation. People close to the couple call it precautionary, but can't explain why. Others whisper it buys time for lawyers behind the scenes. None of it answers why they don't simply deny the claims. The silence invites a darker reading, that speaking publicly risks opening doors better left closed. In that frame, Beyoncé's role looks less like protection and more like command, orchestrating a shutdown while waiting for the storm to pass. By now, the original allegation feels secondary to the behavior around it. One intake record sparks legal warnings, mass silence, social media fallout, and a rival daring the empire to respond. Each element alone could be dismissed. Together, they form a pattern that won't settle. The deeper the Carters retreat, the more space they leave for outsiders to shape the narrative. As 50 Cent keeps poking, the question shifts from whether this escalates to how much pressure the system can take before snapping. People in the industry trace lines backward instead of forward. Epstein's shadow looms not because of one file, but because of what his world represents. Powerful figures moving in private spaces, accusations treated like paperwork, reputations shielded by silence and leverage. Insiders say the script around the Carters feels familiar to anyone who's seen crises like this. When proximity becomes risky, the goal is reducing exposure, not confronting the issue. That instinct shows trained behavior, not panic. The darker takeaway: this isn't the first time these defenses were tested, just the first time someone with nothing to lose keeps pushing loudly from the outside.
What I've gathered from your articles, this seems to be a global network that Epstein was a part of. And I believe there are multiple Epsteins. Like, I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein was the head of the snake. Yeah. Like, they never go after the head of the snake. They never go after
the head of the snake, quote unquote, it's the billionaire class. And so there's a faction of these billionaires in our oligarchy. And of course, the American oligarchy, the American oligarchs don't necessarily, a lot of them don't have an allegiance necessarily to the United States.
As the spotlight widens, old whispers that once hovered at the edges snap sharply back into view. For years, rumors swirled about private gatherings that left guests uneasy, about rooms where the balance of power felt wrong, about events that never quite matched the polished image presented publicly. Alone, these whispers never gained traction. They drifted, dismissed as envy or imagination. But now, with scrutiny tightening around the Carter orbit, the stories stop drifting, they start colliding. Industry veterans note that when multiple unconnected voices report similar unease, the instinct isn't to prove anything, but to ask why the same patterns keep repeating. In that light, today's silence reads less like dignity and more like calculated strategy. Beyoncé's history merges with that strategy. Former collaborators have accused her of exerting control beyond contracts and choreography, claiming manipulation, intimidation, and unsettling spiritual practices. At the time, these allegations were dismissed as jealousy or instability. Now, they are being read as early signals of how power truly operates inside her circle. Insiders say Beyoncé believes absolute control equals protection, and that belief guides every move when the brand feels threatened. Seen this way, the current suppression isn't reactive, it's consistent. It's exactly how perceived threats are always handled. By locking down the perimeter and betting silence will outlast noise, even the marriage begins to look different under pressure. What was sold as loyalty and mutual elevation now reads as a defensive alliance. Industry insiders speculate that separation isn't risky because of heartbreak, but because of exposure. Staying together maintains narrative control. Splitting would shatter that control and invite questions neither side wants answered. That interpretation spreads quickly online, fueling speculation that divorce isn't just unlikely, it's nearly impossible. Every public appearance, every absence, becomes proof in a larger theory. The relationship functions more as insulation than romance. Meanwhile, the figure refusing to follow the rules keeps circling. 50 Cent's image shifts, from provocateur to ultimate stress test. Those who've worked with him say he has an instinct for spotting fear, for reading the slightest tremor of vulnerability. His history of turning conflict into leverage makes every move feel calculated. He isn't making direct accusations, he's daring a reaction. In doing so, he exposes just how trapped his targets are. Every post he drops, every jab he makes, paired with the Carter's silence, reinforces the sense they are boxed in by their own quiet. The wider industry watches closely. The implications reach far beyond one couple. Executives, artists, and power brokers quietly measure their own exposure. If a name like Jay-Z is handled with such care, everyone else begins questioning their own position. The Epstein files evolve from isolated allegations into a stark warning. Proximity to that world carries risk. Even a passing mention forces choices that reveal how deeply fear drives behavior. That fear spreads. It reshapes alliances, freezes commentary, and turns curiosity into obedience. What spreads next is a rumor too specific to ignore and too widespread to dismiss. Inside the industry, people start whispering that Jay-Z isn't an exception. He's a prototype, built on access, proximity, and protection, not just talent or success. Executives, financiers, power brokers, and cultural gatekeepers move in the same closed circles, attend the same off-record gatherings, and follow the same unwritten rules. The conversation isn't about fame anymore, it's about positioning. These figures rarely seek the spotlight, yet they shape careers, narratives, and coverage. The panic isn't about one name appearing. It's the fear that one crack could expose an entire hidden network of relationships that has never faced real public scrutiny. Industry insiders note subtle but unmistakable shifts in behavior among these figures in recent weeks. Travel plans change at the last minute. Assistants are ordered to vet contacts and screen messages with unprecedented scrutiny. Digital footprints vanish overnight, old posts, photos, connections scrubbed or locked down. Lawyers are now the first call, not publicists. It doesn't feel like coincidence, it reads like a coordinated retreat. The concern, according to sources close to these circles, isn't just exposure, it's sequence. If one person loses protection and starts cooperating with authorities, the domino effect could be catastrophic. The anxiety isn't about guilt or innocence, it's about proximity and paper trails never meant for daylight. The rumor gains credibility because the behavior aligns perfectly. Silence spreads across entertainment, finance, and politics. Commentary dries up. Invitations vanish. Those who usually project fearlessness now avoid even indirect connections to controversy. The instinct isn't to defend, it's to disappear. Observers say this is exactly how powerful networks behave when attention itself becomes dangerous. Not every member is hiding something, but no one knows who might decide survival means cooperating. In that environment, loyalty becomes fragile, and fear becomes the currency.
What do they stand to gain from it? I don't think anyone really knows at this point, because it's very, we have to be kind of speculative here, because we're not going to get like an admission from the Trump administration about what they're actually thinking. They're obviously worried about PR and optics, and they have continued for months to kick this can down the road and try.
There's growing chatter that authorities aren't rushing in, they are watching. Letting pressure build, waiting to see who moves first. Sources say the real threat isn't subpoenas, it's isolation. Once someone feels cut off from the network that protected them, Silence stops looking loyal and starts looking dangerous. Survival flips the incentive. Information becomes currency. That fear alone is enough to freeze rooms, stall industries, and put careers on pause. This is where the JZ situation turns symbolic, not personal. The rumored absence, the containment, the silence, it reads less like individual choice and more like a signal up the chain. Don't speak, don't speculate, don't draw attention. The real fear is that one misstep collapses the illusion separating individual scandal from systemic exposure. Once that line breaks, no one controls who gets pulled into the light next. Insiders say conversations are already coded, cautious, hypothetical, like everyone understands the stakes without saying them out loud. It's not about hundreds like him literally, it's structural. Hundreds protected by the same silence, the same undocumented spaces, the same belief that nothing real ever surfaces. That belief is slipping, and that terrifies the system more than any single allegation ever could. Meanwhile, the public pressure doesn't fade. Follower drops, travel rumors, absences, all dissected in real time. Supporters call it restraint. Critics call it arrogance. No one can explain why silence now feels aggressive. And in this climate, perception hardens into reality faster than facts ever.
Sometimes you receive more with not doing well than you receive. I threw an excellent pitch.
We wouldn't even bring.
What makes this moment combustible is that control and chaos are colliding in real time. Beyoncé's instinct is to tighten, wait, and lean on influence and fatigue. 50 Cent's instinct is the exact opposite. Keep prodding until cracks appear. Jay-Z's instinct seems to be retreat, minimizing exposure and staying out of sight while the storm rages. Those instincts slam into each other, generating more heat than any single allegation ever could. Insiders say the true fear isn't what's already known. It's what could be forced into the open if this standoff continues. At this point, the story feels less like a scandal and more like a stress fracture spreading through an entire ecosystem. Old whispers, new leaks, calculated silence, and brazen provocation feed the same unrelenting tension. Nothing decisive has happened, yet everything feels precarious, and that instability sparks questions that won't fade. Is the silence confidence, or is it containment? Is the marriage a shield or a cage? Is 50 Cent bluffing, or biding his time for something far heavier? And if this is how power reacts to mere mention, what does it reveal about what it truly fears? Pick a side, challenge them both, or just watch. This story is still moving, and whatever comes next won't be quiet.